Ah, yes, that time that North Korea told America that we couldn't trim a tree, and America was legitimately ready to start World War III about it. World War Tree, if you will.
Tree.
Today we're talking about the Korean axe murder incident and America's response to that incident, Operation Paul Bunyan. Alright, once upon a time, July 1953, North and South Korean leadership would meet in a small village known as Punjong, right near the 38th parallel, where they would sign an armistice that would technically only pause, but essentially end the Korean War. From this moment forward, we have the official military demarcation line, essentially the line in the sand separating North and South Korea. Surrounding that demarcation line is a 2.5 mile wide, 160 mile long buffer zone known as the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. And that's pretty much it. The Iron Curtain goes up, North Korea becomes the world's largest secret society, and the entire world gets to stand by and watch as there is a competition between capitalism and communism to see which one is actually better, and well, 70 years later, the results are visible from outer space. Wait, let me guess. You're gonna say that's not real communism. Well, I'll tell you what, every time anything bad happens under capitalism, I'm just gonna respond by saying, oh, well, that's not real capitalism. How about that?
Keyboard warrior.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyways, that village where the treaty was signed would go on to become the JSA, or the Joint Security Area, and in theory, this was supposed to be the only point where North and South Korean forces could intermingle. The North Koreans could pass the armistice line into South Korea, and vice versa, provided everybody stayed within the confines of this particular village. Obviously, the point of having a place like this was so that everybody could have a place to exchange prisoners, have peace talks, what have you, but naturally, the intermingling of North Korean and UN forces over the course of time would lead to a bunch of fights breaking out. Luckily, they foresaw this coming, and there was very strict rules about having firearms inside of the JSA, and generally speaking, nobody really ever had them on them. Despite that, there was so many skirmishes so often that the UN would try to get North Korea to agree that they should still abide by the demarcation line. North Koreans stay on their half of the JSA, and South Korean and UN forces stay on their half of the JSA. North Korea consistently refused. And that's all the background info you need. So, fast forward, August 6, 1976. Inside the JSA, there's a bridge. That bridge is called the Bridge of No Return because once you cross that bridge, you not only cross the military demarcation line, but you also cross the border to the JSA, meaning that you are now inside of North Korea, hence the name, the Bridge of No Return.
You know what's so crazy? How like a line literally controls the laws and what happens across that line. Like, that's like Donald Trump when he was the first president to step from south to north or whatever it was. Crazy.
As you can see here on the JSA side of the bridge, there is military checkpoint 3. As I'm sure you can imagine, that's very important because, well, if the North Koreans are going to attack, they're probably going to incorporate that bridge somehow. They've got a military observation post right there. If the North Koreans are coming, they're going to send off the warning. Next thing you know, all of America knows that you're here.
When America finds out, it's war.
Now all of the UN knows that you're here. Alright, but the problem is right next to checkpoint 3, there's a big-ass 100-foot-high poplar tree, and that tree is blocking the vision from all the other checkpoints from being able to see checkpoint 3, meaning that in theory the North Koreans could invade, take out checkpoint 3, build up a big enemy force while using this tree as cover, and then take out the rest of the JSA. So, this tree is a security issue, we gotta get rid of it. Okay, so this is not a big deal whatsoever. That tree is inside the JSA, it's on the South Korean side, so it's technically in South Korea. So they send out some South Korean soldiers with some axes, they're gonna go chop down this tree, that's gonna be the end of it, no big deal
Which is
whatsoever.
normal.
Then the North Koreans show up being dicks and they're like, no, you're not allowed to cut this tree down because we said so. That's why. And the South Koreans are like, what?
What?
Okay, well, I'm going to go get the Americans and then we're going to come back and then we're all going to cut down the tree together. Bye. All right, fast forward a couple weeks.
Why are they against them cutting the tree? Maybe they want that vision to be blocked so they can do things in a certain way.
It's true because it works in their favor. So once that tree is cut off, like he said, they've got a more clear vision.
They want to hide. They're loving
that tree.
They're doing things behind that blind spot.
Yeah.
And they want that tree to stay.
18th, 1976, this time a 15-man working party comprised of Americans and South Koreans show up at this tree to cut it down. And once again, the North Koreans show up almost immediately. This time there's 11 of them, and they are being led by an officer nicknamed the Bulldog because he is well known and has a reputation for starting shit inside the JSA and instigating a bunch of fights. He then proceeds to tell the Americans that they have to stop trimming that tree because that particular poplar tree was planted by none other than Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea. To which the Americans, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but they were like, oh really, did he? He planted this tree? Kim Il-sung, the same guy that you guys think invented the hamburger? and the burrito. And the first time he ever golfed, he golfed a 38 under par with 11 hole-in-ones. And his body's so efficient that he doesn't have to use the bathroom because he doesn't generate waste. That guy, he planted this tree. I don't give a shit. So they turned around and kept cutting down this tree. So at this point, Officer Bulldog sends a runner across the bridge of no return into North Korea. A couple minutes later, 2 trucks show up with 30 more North Korean soldiers, and they all get out with clubs. At this point, Officer Bulldog tells the working party.
So these are trying to do a mad one to the Americans as well.
I think they're lying about the tree though, because
Of course they are.
if it was part of North Korea, why is it in the South Korea?
All I know is that...
Why didn't they claim that? Like, why didn't they extend the line a little bit to claim that tree?
I have no
They're
idea.
chatting nonsense, let's be honest.
They
know it's a blind spot.
Again, stop cutting down the tree or else. And the working party, under the impression they're not actually going to do anything, ignores them and just keeps cutting down the tree, at which point Officer Bulldog famously takes off his watch, wraps it in a handkerchief, sets it down, and yells, "Chukyo," meaning kill in North Korean, at which point all of the soldiers attacked the members of the working party. Every member of the working party was injured and 2 Americans were killed. Shit has officially hit the fan. The entire US military is put on DEFCON 3, which is the highest level of readiness that the military can go to without actually being at war. The president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff are dragged into the bunker underneath the White House to begin
What the
by the
hell?
CIA, and North Korea is shitting its
That
pants because a
escalated.
couple of their guys just may have kicked off World War III. Within 4 hours, the North Koreans issue a public statement trying to pin the entire thing on America, saying the Americans that were there instigated the entire thing and it's their fault. Then North Korean leadership goes before the Non-Aligned Nations Committee, which for the purposes of this story, just think of it as like not NATO, here's the Non-Aligned Nations. You get the idea. They then try to pass a resolution that says they should all condemn America for our violent actions, and America needs to leave the Korean Peninsula altogether. And somehow this passes. At which point America basically looks over and says, "That's nice that you guys passed a little rule. Go ahead and try to enforce it. I dare you."
Whatever you're thinking, you better think again. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to head down there, and I will rain down on a godly fucking firestorm on you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker. I will massacre you. I will fuck you up.
Meanwhile, in the president's bunker, all kinds of crazy ideas are getting thrown around, some of which include bombarding the entire DMZ with artillery fire, using Navy SEALs and precision-guided munitions to take out the North Korean barracks inside of the JSA, essentially killing all the North Koreans that had anything to do with this, destroying the Bridge of No Return, and my personal favorite, just dropping a nuclear bomb off the coast of...
I was literally going to say nuke, but I was like, in my head I was thinking, oh, if I say that, is that sounding too much? But then he just said, drop a nuke one time.
Nothing's ever too much.
North Korea, just to prove a point. At this point, the president chimes in and he's like, no, this has to be an appropriate response. We don't want to overkill this situation and kick off World War III. So that begs the question, what is an appropriate response to the president? Well, that depends on the president, and the president at this particular time was none other than Gerald Ford. You see, that's absolutely terrifying, and most of you have no idea why, because Gerald Ford doesn't have much brand recognition in modern times, so let me fill you in. Gerald Ford played college football at the University of Michigan and had offers to go to the NFL from the Lions and the Green Bay Packers, and turned both of them down because he wanted to be a boxing coach at Yale before he went into law school to become a politician. Somewhere along the way, this guy becomes friends with Richard Nixon. Fast forward, he's ready to retire. His friend Richard Nixon is the president of the United States, and Richard Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, gets accused of taking bribes and has to step down as vice president. At which point, Nixon calls up his old buddy and is like, "Hey, will you fill in as VP for me?" So Gerald Ford, not wanting to let down his buddy, is like, "Sure, absolutely, I'll come be the vice president." So he serves as VP for a little bit, and then Watergate happens, Richard Nixon gets impeached, and Gerald Ford becomes the 38th president of the United States and the only president in American history that was never elected as VP or the president. And
so pure luck.
It was just given to him on a plate.
Just timing. He tried to help his friend out, Wow. And then imagine that, literally within that space of time, you'll become the president of the US.
At the right places, at the right time.
That's like equivalent to winning the lottery.
Yeah.
First thing he does as president is he gives a presidential pardon to his buddy Richard Nixon, who just got impeached, so he can't go to prison. And this pisses off absolutely everybody.
Of course it
Left,
did.
right, middle, doesn't matter. Everybody is furious with Gerald Ford over this. There is a 0% chance that he is ever going to get reelected right out of the
don't
gate.
care.
All right, so just so we're all on the same page, President Gerald Ford, your traditional football-playing, boxing, manly man that didn't want the job as president in the first place and has zero hopes of ever getting reelected, as well as having a history of being willing to sacrifice his personal image and the future of his career just to help out the homies, and we're going to find out what this man deems as an appropriate response. But one thing's for certain, and it is that poplar tree is absolutely coming down. Fast forward 3 days later, August 21st, 7 a.m., a bunch of American and South Korean vehicles roll into the JSA, and Operation Paul Bunyan would officially begin. Inside of those vehicles, there is a 16-man tree trimming crew, and they are being escorted by 2 platoons of American grunts, roughly 60 guys, all carrying axe handles and pistols, ready to teach the North Koreans a lesson if they decide they want to try to stop them again. Now, is there supposed to be 60 guys in the JSA carrying firearms? No, but they're just carrying pistols. It's the smallest gun Uncle Sam has to offer because America is trying very, very hard to be appropriate. Also, they brought a tank, which as you can see is basically a really small tank with a snowplow on the front and an enormous
Bad boy
gun.
tank.
That looks mad.
That's huge.
It's average, okay?
That's pretty pathetic.
Hey, even if it is a little bit on the
Yeah,
smaller
you
side
tell
of
him.
average.
A single grain of rice can tip the scale.
And if that wasn't enough, they're also being backed up by 64 Black Berets, the South Korean Special Forces guys, one of which would actually go on to be the president of South Korea,
Oh, wow.
Moon Jae-in. Okay, here's the deal with the Black Berets. As a minimum requirement, every single one of them has to be a black belt in Taekwondo, and I know what you're...
Hey, yo, you gotta be Taekwondo to be in this force.
You gotta be ready to fight.
Minimum. That's mad.
You gotta be ready.
That's
thinking,
sick.
my nephew got a black belt in Taekwondo from the YMCA when he was like 13 years old. Big deal, okay? I realize it's the same word. Trust me, it's not the same thing. These guys can kick the shit out of your nephew.
Yeah, I bet. Proper train, proper Taekwondo, not the bullshit one.
And the best part of all is
And they got
Taekwondo's
guns.
not even going to come into play because as all the vehicles pull up, the 16-man tree trimming crew runs out. They start cutting down the tree. The Americans get out with their pistols and their axe handles. The South Koreans pull up, they get out, and they start unstrapping something from the bottom of their vehicles. Against the orders of their president, they had all snuck in M16s, grenade launchers, crew-served weapons, anti-tank weapons,
No
and some of
way.
them even had claymores strapped to their chest. The South Korean Special Forces has officially come to party. At this point, they're looking over at the Americans like, really? You guys brought axe handles and pistols? What are you doing, playing fucking Jenga? At this point, the Americans are like, hey, I appreciate the effort. You guys are awesome. That's great. But here's the deal. The only thing better than breaking the rules and getting away with it is not having to break the rules and still getting away with it. AKA, you just gotta find that loophole and make them make new rules later because they didn't know that was an option. You see, they told us we can't have guns in the JSA. They didn't say anything about above the JSA. Because circling overhead, there is 20
Oh, here we
utility
go.
helicopters, and on those helicopters is an entire company of American infantry, roughly 120 19-year-old athletic alcoholics with machine guns, and as soon as those helicopters touch down, they are ready to get out and start kicking ass. But here's the deal with that, it wouldn't be appropriate to send out a bunch of utility helicopters without a security escort, so they're being accompanied by 7 Cobra attack helicopters. And
My
just
God.
in case that's not enough, above that
I'm
there is
loving
somewhere
this.
between 12 and 20 B-52 Strato fortresses that just got in from Guam that are now doing hot laps around the entire demilitarized zone.
Deep this for a second, yeah. Deep this for a sec. On a serious note, you guys as well. This all was because of a goddamn tree. One tree. This has all kicked off. You got 30 fighter jets floating. You got guys with Claymore, 20 black belt guys, like, because of a tree.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I think ego got in the way.
Ego got in the way.
Ego. What was it? North Korea that said you can't cut the tree?
One of them did, but whoever it was.
North Korea have no right to tell South Korea what they can do on their part of the land.
Exactly.
It was so obvious they wanted to just keep that as a blind spot for their sake.
So they could do stuff.
And because the Americans were still cutting the tree, the North Korean guy, he got offended. His ego got
hurt. That
ruined.
bulldog guy.
And then he just said, let's attack.
And 2 Americans were killed
That's so sad.
because of that.
They were just there minding no business
They
cutting the
got
tree.
a job. They got told
Yeah.
to do a job. Do you know what I mean? They're getting paid. They can't deny. Mad.
Each of which is carrying like 70,000 pounds worth of bombs,
Oh my
some
God.
of which were allegedly nuclear warheads.
No
in addition
way.
to that, there's an entire fighter squadron of American F-4 Phantoms that just got in from Okinawa, and a bunch of South Korean F-5s, as well as a bunch of American F-111s that just got in from Idaho. In addition to that, there's roughly 10,000 troops on standby just inside the South Korean border, ready to run in if they're needed, and on top of that, there's another 12,000 troops already en route to South Korea, just in case. Oh, and now the USS Midway, a fucking aircraft carrier,
What
and
the
her
hell?
entire security detail are parked off the North Korean coast.
If North Korea even dare to do anything about this tree now, they're screwed.
And all of this was done in the span of 3 days. America has probably just conducted the greatest showing of force ever, and
You have to,
turned
though,
this
innit?
poplar tree into the largest game of fuck around and find out in human history. Cut back to the men on the ground. Operation Paul Bunyan has been going on for approximately 5 minutes. The 5 longest minutes in human history of an entire army watching 16 dudes trim a tree, and not a single sign of a North Korean anywhere.
Crazy.
Which is really weird. Normally they would have been here by now. What is going on? At this point, the American leadership comes to the realization that the North Koreans know exactly what's going on. There's a 0% chance that they don't, and they have decided that their best option is to
Back
not show
up.
up at all, and then later on they're going to play it off like they had no idea the entire thing actually happened, making it appear as though America's show of force was not that big of a deal. At this point, the American leadership takes a deep breath, and they're like, okay, we have to keep this appropriate. We're the bigger people in this. That's a great PR move by the North Koreans. Doesn't matter. We know what we did. We know what we accomplished, and that should be enough. I'm just kidding. The American leadership immediately sent a transmission to the North Koreans telling them
Tell
that they
them.
were there for, and I quote, to finish the work left unfinished.
Jeez! I don't think they'll do that. I thought like, what he said about North Korea acting like they don't know. I thought that's
they
what
wanted to
happened.
make sure they knew.
They did not call all these jets out for nothing.
Yeah.
Now, the North Korean frontline communications just go absolutely nuts. We know this because American intelligence was monitoring their frontline communications, and one of the intel analysts that was listening said, and I quote, "This move blew their fucking minds." At this point, the North Koreans are absolutely terrified, but they have to do something because they've got way too much pride not to. So, all of the North Korean troops in the immediate area are ordered to go to the Bridge of No Return. Within a matter of minutes, a bunch of trucks pull up on the other side of the Bridge of No Return, and 150 North Korean soldiers get out, and they proceed to stand there and watch silently for what I presume to be the longest 35 minutes of their entire lives as they watch the Americans
One wrong
finish
move.
cutting down this tree. And that's pretty much it. The Americans finished trimming this tree. They left a big ass stump there, so the North Koreans never ever forgot about it. And then once that stump rotted away, they put a plaque there in honor of the 2 soldiers that lost their lives, Lieutenant
Good.
Mark Barrett and Captain Arthur Boniface.
R.I.P.,
North
that's
Korea was
better
then
side.
also ordered to pay reparations to their family members. In addition to that, the North Koreans issued a statement saying the entire situation was regrettable, which according to the experts is the closest thing to an apology that you will ever get out of the North Koreans. And then to absolutely everybody's surprise, on August 25th, the North Koreans come back to the negotiating table and they're like, hey, remember that idea you guys have had for like the last 20 years where you wanted to split the JSA in half? to
Now they
separate
wanna
North
do
and
it.
South Korean forces so a bunch of dumb shit didn't happen? Yeah, we think we'd finally like to do that. So yeah, in conclusion, I guess,
Why did it take them so long? They just got pride. They just want to be like, no, we want our way on the highway. Like, they just want to feel like they've got some sort of power. They don't like that America just came in and was like, bam, bam, bam. Or they don't want to go just like, yes, America, you're right. They want to do it their way, feel like they got power behind their land as well. All that for a tree. Oh my God. And imagine the running cost of getting all those jets over. 2 lives were taken. So many people were injured. Just let the tree go, man. Imagine that. Imagine like North Korea was dumb enough to be like, you know, when America came back with all the fighter jets and stuff. Imagine North Korea let their pride come so bad that they just nuked the area or something.
But then
I know
that
they would,
would,
but imagine
that would cause
that
World War
Three.
III.
Yeah, that would be World War Three. Full stop. No questions. Yeah,
And I'm sorry,
but it could have happened.
they'll get taken over.
Yeah, they'll get done very quick. But it could have happened though.
It can, but
It could have.
that's very...
It would be stupid of them, and they would
Yeah.
have put people make stupid decisions, and you know people get killed
when
from
their prides get hurt.
It's pride.
Yeah.
And imagine they let their pride get in the way where they're like, fuck it, we're going to throw a bomb in that area. Any American in there is dying as well. The same way they killed those 2 Americans. That would have been mad over a tree. Crazy. Great video from the Fat Electrician. We loved watching his videos. So keep recommending them, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For now, peace out.
Bye.